there, Facebook and YouTubes and all the internet folks out there. Yeah, it's winter in Alaska and we're practicing. It's 28 degrees, it's not exactly cold. What are we practicing? We're practicing 5 to go. Let's talk about 5 to go. So the first thing to understand about 5 to go is that it's an accuracy challenging stage, right? You've got 10-inch targets. You've got a 10-inch target there at the 10-yard line, 12-yard line, 15-yard line, and 18-yard line. That 18-yard, 10-inch target is, for all intents and purposes, the most challenging target in all of Steel Challenge. Between that one and the pendulum 10-inchers, they're kind of a small target. And then, of course, your stop plate's over here at 7 yards out with a nice big old fat 12-incher. So, what do you do about it? Well, the first thing to understand is that these first two targets, they don't actually get tremendously harder as you go. The literal distance between yourself and target one is about 33 feet when you measure from the center of the front of the box towards that target, ish. I step things off sometimes without a tape measure, maybe. Anyway, it's about 33 feet. And that second target at the 12-yard line, the distance of that target is roughly 36 feet, 37 feet from the center of the box, because it's not as far off the center line as that closer target. So those two targets are roughly equivalent in terms of difficulty as far as accuracy is concerned. However, we start moving out, and it's kind of hard to see here. Let me see if I can adjust the camera. We start moving out, and lo and behold, now we're starting to actually get significantly further. This 15-yard target is not only 15 yards downrange as far as going to the line, but it's also at a slight angle out from the center line, so it's a little bit even further than adding 9 feet to target 2. And that one way over yonder in the pawpaw patch at 18 yards, you stretch that out and do the whole Pythagorean theorem thing, and it's a long ways. It's more than the 54 feet from the center of the box than the yardage would indicate as you're marching down the line. So it's actually a first stretch out there. So what in the heck does all this mean, really? Well, it means that most people spend way too much time shooting at targets 1 and 2, those two left targets, and way too little time mentally shooting at targets 3 and especially target 4 before they execute their snap to the stop plate. Now, what in the world do I mean when I say they spend not enough time mentally? They go too fast mentally. What I really mean is that we have a tendency as shooters to see what we think we need to see. And on that 10-yard, that 33-foot target out there off to the left, we are able to see a little bit less and still make the shot. We are able to get mentally just a skosh sloppy, if you will. And that's okay. That's not a negative thing. In fact, it's quite the opposite. We don't want to spend too much time thinking about things we don't have to think about. We want to spend exactly the right amount of time. And so we're doing a lot of stuff coming up to that first target, right? We've got our grip, we're at the low ready if we're shooting a rimfire, and we've got to bring it up, and we've got to be able to get the sights aligned, and, you know, the whole thing. There's a lot of stuff going on. But me and this fella here, we need to mentally take just a skosh more time to think about what it is we're doing. So how much is a skosh? Well, could be 0.01 of a second. It could be 0.01. We just have to make sure that we see what we need to see. And it may not actually be any slower on the clock. We may actually be just as fast or faster when we are actually doing that. But our intent has to be to process and see what we need to see to execute a good shot here on good old plate number 3, or God forbid, over there on plate number 4. Now, most people that I've observed have more problems with plate 3 than they do with plate 4. Why is that? Well, let's say that you're walking down an icy path and you're quite comfortable in your walking, and you come to a stretch of path where all of a sudden, ah! Once that happens, you start to pay attention to what's going on. And so the next step that you take you're not going to have that blah feeling. You're going to actually be prepared for things. And so what I see happen with shooters on plate 3 is they have a little bit of a dumpster fire, and then they're like, oh yeah, I have to see a little bit more. And so they take their time on plate 4, mentally, not necessarily temporally. They take their time on plate 4 and they don't have the problem with it. The problem resides at plate 3. I know for a fact when I miss plate 3 and don't miss plate 4, it's because I was not thinking about plate 3. I was still thinking about plate 1, and by the time I get to plate 4, well, I've remembered, oh poop, I actually need to see a little bit more before I execute the shot. All right, so that's all great. We talked about what your mind's thinking about, but how does that translate to what's actually happening on the range? So for practice, what I would encourage you to do is to remember that target 1 and target 2 are about the same. Target 1 and target 2 are about the same distance from you. They're not that much of a difficult target compared to the rest of the array, right? So go ahead and work on pushing your first and second shot just a little bit. If you can get your first shot down and move the gun rapidly to the second plate, even with iron sights, you can do that in 0.3 seconds. 0.29, 0.28, yeah, we're starting to push a little bit for me, but I can certainly do a 0.3 transition between plate 1 and plate 2. So I have to push plate 1 and plate 2. So I'm going to work that part of the array in isolation. Plate 1, plate 2. So that was a 0.69 first shot. I can do better. 0.29 second shot, 2.9 split. That's about where I'm at right now, is I can push about a 0.29 onto that second plate. That gives me both shots under a second. Now, if I take both the first 2 shots in under a second, I've got like, what? A second and a half, second and a quarter to take care of the last 3 shots. I can almost take my time, at least in theory, mentally. Now, we have to transition from those first 2 plates to the second 2 plates. So what I need to do is I need to go fast on the first 2 plates. Sure, I need to push the second shot, but I don't want to think about that anymore. I've made that the new normal, pushing that second shot. But then I need to make sure I see what I need to see for shot 3. It may take a little time. My split there is going to slow down probably to a 0.35, maybe even a 0.4. When I listen to myself, it actually sounds like there's a hiccup as I'm shooting. All right, so that was 0.230. First shot was a 7.2, but the split to the second plate was a 0.29. So that had me at 1.01, both shots under a second, before I got into 0.45 split, 0.42 split, 0.42 split to plate 5. So if you push those first 2 shots, you've built a budget that allows you to take your time and pay attention to what you need to see for plate 3, which sets you up for success for plate 4. Go have fun with 5 to go. Hey, you watched all the way to the end, so you get bonus content. That's right, there is one more trick that I found for 5 to go. And this doesn't apply to everybody, and it doesn't apply equally to everybody, because it has to do with perspective. And I have a rather unique perspective on the range, because I'm 6'1". If you're 5 foot, 5'3", you don't have the same perspective. Right, so look at those targets. You know, it sure as heck looks from my perspective like that target on the left is a lot lower than the center target and the far target there. And all of a sudden I have to come back down to this close one. What the heck? I'm shooting uphill and then down. Or am I? If we get a little low in the box, now those plates are flat. Up, up, down. The plates haven't moved. I have. So if you're Casey Eusebio, you probably don't care, because KC, he's short. Well, actually he's right-sized for this stage and for most of the Steel Challenge stages, because he's at the appropriate height when he gets in the box for those plates to look flat. People like me, and string beans that are even taller, man, all of a sudden, unless we start to get low, it looks like we have to shoot up, down, all the time. Every stage becomes pendulum! Woohoo! But it isn't. Those plates are all at the same height, unless your sticks are different heights. That maybe happens occasionally for me. So, here's another tip. If you're a tall boy, hey, maybe consider getting your stance a little bit lower in the box so those plates look flat. It may look dorky when people are looking at you from the outside of the box because, you know, you're in your Spider-Man crouch or whatever, but the plates will appear flat and you'll have less of a tendency to shoot up, down because you don't have to. Just shoot flat. See you on the range.